The first anomaly appeared at 3:47 hours, 37,000 feet above the Pacific Northwest. Major Kestrel Wraith. Vance watched her multifunction display flicker, the green symbology dancing like fireflies against the cockpit's blue glow. Her F-22 Raptor, tail number 54098, had been tracking a mystery signature for the past 18 minutes, something that shouldn't exist at this altitude, moving in patterns that defied conventional aircraft physics. Ghost Rider 2-1, you getting this? Her voice cut through the static, professional but edged with curiosity that had kept her alive through 3 deployments. Negative on unusual contacts, Wraith. Captain Marcus Razor Chen's response crackled through her helmet speakers. His F-22 flew 2 miles to her starboard, invisible except for the data link symbol on her tactical display. Your scope clean. Kestrel's gloved fingers danced across the instrument panel, cross-referencing multiple sensor inputs. The signature remained, intermittent, ghostly, appearing and vanishing like breath on glass. Her APG-77 radar painted empty sky, but something in the electromagnetic spectrum whispered of metal and movement. After 12 years flying everything from A-10s in Afghanistan to test aircraft at Edwards, she'd learned to trust the machine's subtle language. Stand by, Ghost Rider. Running diagnostics. She initiated a full system check, watching cascading data streams illuminate her helmet-mounted display. Every component reported nominal status. The signature flickered again, bearing 47, Angels 39, moving at impossible angles that suggested either advanced stealth technology or atmospheric phenomena she'd never encountered. The pre-dawn darkness stretched endlessly below, broken only by the distant glow of Seattle's metropolitan sprawl. At this altitude, the curvature of Earth became apparent, stars brilliant and unwavering in the thin atmosphere. Kestrel had always found peace in these moments, suspended between Earth and space, wrapped in $27 million of cutting-edge technology, alone with the infinite. But tonight felt different. The mystery contact moved with purpose, tracing lazy figure eights that reminded her of search patterns. Its altitude remained consistent with high-altitude reconnaissance flights, yet no friendly aircraft were scheduled in this sector. The restricted airspace belonged to Joint Base Lewis McChord's training operations, theoretically clear except for their 2-ship formation. Control, Ghost Rider Flight, requesting updated picture. She transmitted to the AWACS aircraft orbiting 100 miles south. Ghost Rider Flight Control, show you 2 friendlies only, no other air traffic within 50 nautical miles. Kestrel frowned behind her oxygen mask. The electromagnetic signature pulsed again, stronger this time, accompanied by a brief radar return that vanished before she could lock onto it. Whatever flew in the darkness ahead operated at the edge of detection, playing hide and seek with sensors that could track a hummingbird at 20 miles. Her instincts, honed by countless hours in contested airspace, whispered warnings. Something about this contact felt familiar, triggering memories she couldn't quite place. The way it moved, the intermittent nature of its appearance, it reminded her of tactics she'd studied but never seen deployed. The night was about to become much more interesting. The electromagnetic signature strengthened, painting Kestrel's threat warning system with amber cautions that made her pulse quicken. She'd flown combat missions over Syria where surface-to-air missiles created similar patterns, but this felt different, more organic, less mechanical. The contact seemed to anticipate her sensor sweeps, vanishing milliseconds before her radar could achieve lock-on. Razor, recommend we go tactical. Her voice remained steady despite growing unease. Something's not adding up here. Copy, Wraith. Switching to discreet. Captain Chen's transmission shifted to their encrypted tactical frequency, eliminating any possibility of interception by civilian air traffic control or casual listeners with scanners. Kestrel adjusted her flight path, banking 15 degrees left to parallax the mystery contact against the star field. The maneuver revealed nothing to her naked eye, but her passive sensors detected subtle infrared variations, heat signatures that suggested jet exhaust at extreme range. Whatever flew out there burned fuel like a conventional aircraft, ruling out atmospheric anomalies or equipment malfunctions. Her F-22's stealth characteristics made detection unlikely at this range, but the contact seemed aware of their presence. It adjusted course subtly, maintaining distance, while continuing its methodical search pattern. Kestrel recognized the behavior from her own training. Someone was looking for something specific, using systematic grid searches that covered maximum area with minimum fuel consumption. Control, Ghost Rider 2-1, requesting immediate identification of all scheduled operations in Restricted Area 6701. She kept her transmission professional, but urgency crept into her voice. Ghost Rider 2-1, stand by for coordination check. The pause stretched longer than normal, filled with dead air that suggested hurried conversations in the AWACS mission crew compartment. Kestrel used the silence to study her tactical display more carefully. The contact's movement pattern showed discipline and training. Whoever piloted that aircraft possessed military-grade skills and knowledge of standard search procedures. Ghost Rider Flight Control, negative scheduled operations in your area. All training flights terminated at 200 local. You are cleared to investigate unknown contact. Rules of Engagement Alpha. Row Alpha meant identify first. Engage only if directly threatened. Kestrel acknowledged while activating her aircraft's most sensitive detection modes. The F-22's sensor fusion system combined radar, infrared, and electronic warfare inputs into a comprehensive picture that revealed more than individual components alone. The mystery contact flickered into clearer resolution. Definitely an aircraft, possibly twin-engined, moving at subsonic speeds that suggested fuel conservation over speed. Its flight pattern had shifted from random searching to purposeful tracking, as if aware of their approach and preparing for contact. Wraith, I'm getting intermittent returns now, Razor reported. Bearing 52, range approximately 12 miles, Angels 37, looks like it's descending. Kestrel confirmed the contact's descent profile on her display. Whatever aircraft they discovered was coming down to a more conventional altitude, possibly preparing for landing or rendezvous with ground forces. The possibilities multiplied in her mind: drug smuggling, foreign intelligence gathering, or something more exotic that required F-22s to investigate. Her tactical training kicked in automatically. She began computing intercept vectors while maintaining defensive separation, ready to engage if the situation demanded it. The descent continued steadily, purposefully, drawing them into whatever mystery waited in the darkness below. Kestrel felt the familiar pre-combat tension building in her shoulders, the hyper-awareness that had kept her alive through multiple combat tours. Something important was about to happen. Kestrel rolled her F-22 into a shallow dive, maintaining perfect formation discipline while closing on the descending contact. The pre-dawn air remained glass-smooth at 35,000 feet, allowing precise maneuvering without the thermal turbulence that would develop after sunrise. Her heads-up display painted targeting symbology across the windscreen, overlaying digital information onto the physical world with crystalline precision. Contact descending through flight level 350, she reported, watching the mystery aircraft's altitude decrease in measured increments. Maintaining heading 75, airspeed approximately 280 knots. The electromagnetic signature had solidified into something more recognizable, the distinctive radar cross-section of a twin-turbine aircraft, possibly military transport or cargo configuration. Kestrel's threat assessment system analyzed the returns, comparing them against a database of known aircraft profiles stored in the F-22's mission computer. Ghost Rider 2-1, Control. Be advised we're receiving emergency beacon transmissions on 243 MHz. Possible aircraft in distress bearing 48 from your position. The international emergency frequency. Kestrel switched her secondary radio to monitor the distress channel, immediately hearing the repetitive tone that indicated an automated emergency locator transmitter. Someone was broadcasting Mayday signals from approximately the same area as their mystery contact. Control, confirm you're receiving ELT signals from the same bearing as our unknown aircraft. Affirmative, Ghostwriter 2-1. Emergency signals consistent with aircraft beacon activation. Kestrel's tactical picture suddenly shifted from interception to rescue. The mystery contact wasn't an intruder. It was a distressed aircraft, possibly conducting emergency procedures or attempting forced landing preparation. Her rules of engagement changed automatically from potential hostile to humanitarian assistance. Razor, switching to search and rescue posture, she transmitted while adjusting her aircraft's sensor configuration for maximum detection range. Unknown aircraft may require assistance. Copy, switching to SAR mode. Captain Chen's F-22 moved into supporting position, providing overlapping sensor coverage while maintaining tactical spacing in case the situation developed complications. The contact aircraft continued its descent, now passing through 28,000 feet on a steady glide path that suggested either controlled emergency descent or fuel exhaustion procedures. Kestrel began computing glide ratios and potential landing sites, her mind automatically cataloging airports, military bases, and suitable emergency landing areas within the aircraft's probable range. Unknown aircraft on emergency frequency. This is United States Air Force Ghostwriter 2-1. If you can hear this transmission, please respond on frequency 243. Static answered her call, punctuated by the steady warble of the emergency beacon. The distressed aircraft either couldn't receive her transmission or was too busy managing its emergency to respond. Kestrel increased power, closing the distance to establish visual contact while maintaining safe separation. Her infrared sensors detected heat signatures consistent with turbine engines operating at reduced power settings, exactly what she'd expect from an aircraft conducting emergency descent procedures. The pilot below was following proper emergency protocols, maintaining controlled flight while descending toward potentially survivable altitude. The pre-dawn darkness made visual identification impossible, but her sensors painted an increasingly detailed picture. Twin engines, high wing configuration, approximately 60-foot wingspan, consistent with military transport or civilian cargo aircraft. The heat signature showed engines running but at minimal power, suggesting either fuel conservation or mechanical problems requiring reduced thrust settings. Control, Ghostwriter 2-1. Recommend alerting search and rescue assets for possible emergency recovery operation. The night had transformed from routine patrol to potential life-saving mission, and Kestrel felt her training shift seamlessly from combat mindset to rescue operations. The emergency beacon's steady warble filled Kestrel's headset as she closed within 5 nautical miles of the descending aircraft. Her F-22's advanced optics began resolving details invisible to conventional sensors. The subtle infrared bloom of engine exhaust, wing surface temperatures that revealed airframe configuration, and the distinctive heat patterns that identified specific aircraft types. Contact now descending through flight level 240, she reported while fine-tuning her intercept angle. Rate of descent consistent with emergency procedures, maintaining controlled flight attitude. The mystery aircraft's descent profile showed professional airmanship. Whoever piloted that machine understood emergency procedures and was executing them with textbook precision. The steady descent rate, maintained heading, and consistent airspeed indicated either serious mechanical problems managed skillfully or fuel exhaustion handled by experienced crew. Ghostwriter 2-1, control, search, and rescue assets launching from McCord. Estimated time to your position 47 minutes. Request you maintain visual contact and provide navigation assistance. Copy, control, maintaining observation position. Kestrel adjusted her flight path to parallel the descending aircraft, matching its course while staying far enough away to avoid wake turbulence or creating additional complications for an already distressed crew. Her thermal imaging system finally achieved clear resolution of the contact aircraft. The image that appeared on her multifunction display made her breath catch in recognition. A C-130 Hercules transport, four-engine turboprop configuration, with distinctive wing and fuselage proportions that identified it as military variant. The heat signature showed only two engines operating, explaining the emergency descent and reduced airspeed. Razor, I've got visual identification. C-130 appears to be two-engine failure, maintaining controlled descent. She transmitted the information while studying the thermal image more carefully. Something about the aircraft's configuration seemed familiar, triggering memories she couldn't immediately place. Copy visual ID. Should we attempt radio contact on standard military frequencies? Kestrel switched her primary radio to the common military emergency frequency while continuing to monitor 243. Unknown C-130 aircraft. This is Air Force Ghostwriter 21 on guard frequency. We have visual contact and are prepared to provide assistance. Please respond if able. The response came immediately, crackling through static with a voice that made Kestrel's blood freeze in recognition. Ghostwriter 21, this is Angel Flight 77. We have dual engine failure and are declaring emergency. Request immediate vector to nearest suitable landing field. Angel Flight 77. The call sign hit her like a physical blow, dredging up memories she'd buried for 3 years. Angel Flights, medical evacuation missions that carried wounded warriors from battlefield to hospital, missions she'd escorted during her deployment to Afghanistan. The voice belonged to someone she'd known, someone who'd shared the same dangerous skis over Helmand Province. Angel 77, Ghostwriter 21. Understand dual engine failure. Nearest suitable field is McCord, bearing 195 degrees, distance 32 nautical miles. Her voice remained professional despite the emotional earthquake triggered by recognition. Search and rescue assets are launching to assist. Copy, McCord bearing 195, 32 miles. Angel 77 turning to heading 195. Kestrel watched the C-130 begin its turn toward Joint Base Lewis McCord, the aircraft's movements revealing the skill of its crew despite severe mechanical problems. But her mind was racing through possibilities and probabilities, trying to understand how an Angel flight, medical evacuation mission, had ended up in restricted airspace at 400 hours. Something about this situation didn't align with normal operations, and her instincts whispered warnings about coincidences that seemed too convenient to believe. The C-130's turn toward McCord revealed details that made Kestrel's tactical awareness spike into high alert. Her infrared sensors detected additional heat signatures along the aircraft's fuselage, patterns consistent with external equipment pods or unusual cargo configurations that didn't match standard transport operations. The medical evacuation aircraft carried more than just passengers. Angel 77, Ghostwriter 21, confirm your mission status and souls on board. She kept her voice neutral while activating her aircraft's most sensitive detection modes, searching for additional information about the distressed C-130's actual configuration and purpose. Ghostwriter Angel 77 were carrying priority medical cargo, 14 souls on board including crew. Request priority handling for emergency landing. Medical cargo. The phrase triggered more memories from Afghanistan, coded language that could mean anything from wounded personnel to sensitive biological materials requiring special handling. Kestrel had escorted similar flights carrying everything from battlefield casualties to classified medical research, missions that operated under special security protocols. Angel 77, understand priority medical cargo. McCord approach has been notified of your emergency status. She paused, studying the C-130's heat signature more carefully. Confirm your departure point and destination for coordination purposes. The silence stretched longer than normal before the response came. Ghostwriter, Angel 77 departed Elmendorf for transport to Walter Reed Medical Center. Encountered mechanical problems approximately 2 hours into flight. Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska to Walter Reed in Maryland. A plausible route that would take the C-130 through Pacific Northwest airspace. But something about the timing didn't align with the aircraft's current position and fuel state. The flight path seemed wrong for a direct route, and the aircraft's configuration suggested modifications beyond standard medical evacuation equipment. Copy, Angel 77. Ghostwriter flight will escort you to McCord for emergency landing. Kestrel maintained professional calm while her mind analyzed discrepancies between the stated mission and observed facts. Her combat experience had taught her to trust instincts when details didn't match explanations. The C-130 continued its descent toward 15,000 feet, maintaining the steady glide profile that indicated skilled crew management of a serious emergency. But Kestrel's sensors detected subtle variations in the aircraft's electromagnetic signature that suggested electronic systems far more sophisticated than standard medical evacuation equipment. Razor, maintain observation position and monitor for additional contacts, she transmitted on their discrete tactical frequency. Something about this situation feels irregular. Copy Wraith. My systems are picking up unusual emissions from that C-130. Electronics don't match standard medevac configuration. Captain Chen's observation confirmed her suspicions. The distressed aircraft carried equipment that exceeded normal medical evacuation requirements, possibly including classified systems or cargo that explained its presence in restricted airspace during unusual hours. Angel flights operated under special protocols, but this mission showed characteristics that suggested even higher levels of classification. Kestrel found herself caught between humanitarian responsibility and security concerns. The C-130 needed assistance, but its actual purpose remained unclear. Her duty required both protecting American airspace and providing aid to distressed aircraft, responsibilities that might conflict depending on what Angel 77 actually carried in its cargo bay. The pre-dawn darkness suddenly felt less peaceful and more ominous as she escorted the mystery aircraft toward whatever truth waited at McCord. The descent continued through crystal-clear air that revealed more details with each 1,000 feet lost. Kestrel's advanced optics resolved the C-130's tail number, 67-3154, and she immediately queried the aircraft identification database through her secure data link. The response came within seconds. The aircraft existed in military registry, assigned to the 36th Airlift Squadron, but showed no scheduled flight plans for the past 72 hours. Control, Ghostwriter 2-1, requesting verification of Angel 77's flight authorization and cargo manifest. She transmitted the query while maintaining visual contact with the descending transport, her unease growing with each revealed inconsistency. Ghostwriter 2-1, stand by for coordination with higher authority. The pause suggested her request required classification levels above normal air traffic control access. Kestrel had encountered similar delays during combat missions when sensitive operations required multiple authorization levels. Whatever Angel 77 carried, it demanded special handling that extended beyond routine emergency procedures. Angel 77, Ghostwriter 2-1, Confirm your estimated fuel remaining and crew status. She used the routine question to assess the C-130's actual emergency severity while buying time for her suspicions to develop into actionable intelligence. Ghost Rider, Angel 77, approximately 47 minutes fuel remaining. Crew managing emergency procedures normally. We have one critically injured patient requiring immediate medical attention upon landing. Critically injured patient. The detail added urgency to the situation while potentially explaining the unusual flight profile and timing. Medical emergencies could justify deviations from planned routes, unusual cargo configurations, and operations during restricted hours. But Kestrel's combat experience warned against accepting explanations that seemed too convenient. Her thermal sensors detected movement within the C-130's cargo bay, heat signatures that suggested multiple personnel moving around equipment that radiated thermal patterns unlike standard medical gear. The electromagnetic emissions continued showing characteristics more consistent with intelligence-gathering equipment than life support systems. Razor, you getting anomalous thermal readings from the cargo bay? She queried her wingman while maintaining formation discipline and professional radio procedures. Affirmative. Heat patterns suggest electronic systems under active operation, not passive medical equipment. Captain Chen's analysis confirmed her observations, also detecting intermittent radar emissions consistent with surveillance equipment. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern that suggested Angel 77 wasn't conducting routine medical evacuation. The aircraft carried equipment and personnel engaged in active operations that required sophisticated electronics and radar systems. But the emergency remained real. Two failed engines created genuine danger regardless of the mission's actual nature. Control, Ghost Rider 2-1. Recommend alerting security personnel at McCord for special handling of inbound emergency aircraft. Copy, Ghost Rider 2-1. Security forces have been notified and will be standing by for Angel 77's arrival. The response confirmed that higher authorities understood the aircraft's sensitive nature. Special security procedures would ensure proper handling of whatever classified cargo or personnel the C-130 carried, while medical teams would address any genuine casualties requiring treatment. Kestrel found herself respecting the C-130 crew's professionalism, despite growing questions about their actual mission. They maintained perfect emergency procedures while managing what appeared to be classified operations under difficult circumstances. Whatever they were really doing, they handled it with skill that commanded professional admiration. The mystery continued deepening as McCord's runway lights became visible on the horizon, promising answers and raising new questions about what waited in Angel 77's cargo bay. McCord's approach lights painted geometric patterns across the pre-dawn landscape as Angel 77 established final approach course. Kestrel maintained escort position slightly above and behind the C-130, her sensors recording every detail of the emergency landing sequence for later analysis. The transport aircraft's crew executed textbook procedures despite whatever classified complications their actual mission created. McCord Tower, Angel 77, declaring emergency, requesting immediate landing runway 01. 2 engine failure, priority medical cargo on board. The C-130's pilot transmitted with calm professionalism that reminded Kestrel why she respected the airlift community's skill and dedication. Angel 77, McCord Tower, cleared to land runway 01, emergency vehicles standing by. Wind calm, altimeter 30.15, contact ground on 121.9 after landing. The routine exchange masked extraordinary security preparations visible only to Kestrel's elevated perspective. Her infrared sensors detected dozens of vehicles surrounding the runway, far more than normal emergency response required. Security forces, medical teams, and specialized equipment created a reception committee that confirmed Angel 77's cargo exceeded routine medical evacuation materials. Ghost Rider 2-1, Control. You are cleared to return to patrol altitude after Angel 77 touches down safely. Negative, Control. Request permission to remain overhead until emergency aircraft is secured. Kestrel's instincts demanded she witness whatever developed on the ground. Too many inconsistencies required resolution, and her responsibility extended beyond simple escort duties. Stand by, Ghost Rider 2-1. The pause stretched while higher authorities debated her request. Through her secure data link, classification indicators suggested multiple agencies were coordinating Angel 77's reception: Defense Intelligence Agency, Air Force Special Operations Command, and others whose involvement confirmed the mission's sensitivity. Ghost Rider 2-1, cleared to maintain observation position until relieved. Switch to discrete frequency 387.425 for further instructions. The frequency assignment indicated special operations coordination. Kestrel programmed the new channel while watching Angel 77 touch down with smoke streaming from overheated brakes and tires stressed by emergency landing procedures. The C-130 rolled out normally despite its mechanical problems, testament to the crew's skill and the aircraft's rugged design. Ghost Rider 2-1, Darkside Control, maintain observation position and report any unusual activity during ground operations. The new voice carried authority that suggested direct connection to classified operations centers. Copy, Darkside Control, maintaining observation. Kestrel activated her most sensitive ground surveillance modes, while the C-130 taxied toward the reception area, where dozens of vehicles waited in precise formations. Her thermal imaging revealed the first unusual development as Angel 77's cargo ramp lowered. Instead of medical stretchers or standard evacuation equipment, figures in protective suits emerged carrying sealed containers that required special handling procedures. Hazmat teams surrounded the aircraft while security personnel established wide perimeters that kept normal base operations at significant distance. Darkside, Ghost Rider 2-1, observing specialized cargo offload procedures, personnel in protective equipment handling sealed containers. She reported the facts while her mind raced through possibilities that could explain the scene developing below. Copy, Ghost Rider 2-1. Continue observation and report any personnel attempting to leave the immediate area. The instruction confirmed that whatever Angel 77 carried required containment protocols that extended beyond normal security measures. Biological materials, chemical samples, or radioactive substances could necessitate such precautions, but the involvement of military intelligence agencies suggested something more exotic and potentially dangerous. Kestrel found herself witness to operations that would probably never appear in official reports, watching professionals handle secrets that justified F-22 escort and emergency security mobilization. The mystery deepened with each passing minute of the carefully choreographed ground operation. The offloading operation proceeded with military precision that revealed extensive planning, despite the emergency circumstances. Kestrel's overhead perspective provided unique insight into procedures that clearly weren't improvised responses to mechanical failure. Every vehicle, every person, every action followed predetermined protocols that suggested Angel 77's mission had been anticipated and prepared for regardless of its emergency status. Darkside, observing approximately 26 personnel in protective suits conducting systematic cargo removal. Containers appear to require level A hazmat protocols. She reported, while her sensors tracked heat signatures that indicated sophisticated equipment inside the sealed containers being carefully transferred to waiting transport vehicles. Copy, Ghost Rider 2-1. any indication of personnel casualties or medical emergencies. The question reminded Kestrel of the stated reason for Angel 77's priority status, a critically injured patient requiring immediate medical attention. But her thermal imaging showed no medical evacuation procedures, no stretchers, no ambulances rushing toward hospital facilities. The entire operation focused on cargo recovery with no apparent concern for human casualties. Negative medical evacuation observed, dark side. All personnel appear mobile and engaged in cargo operations. The response confirmed what she'd suspected. The medical emergency had been cover story for a classified mission that encountered genuine mechanical problems. Angel 77 wasn't carrying wounded personnel from Alaska to Maryland. It was transporting something that required hazmat protocols and intelligence agency oversight. Her secure data link provided partial mission information as classification restrictions lifted slightly. Operation Nightfall, biological containment protocols, threat level classified, recovery priority maximum. The details remained frustratingly incomplete, but the basic outline suggested Angel 77 had been recovering biological materials from Alaska under conditions that demanded extreme secrecy. Ghostwriter 21, Darkside, be advised friendly aircraft approaching from the southeast. Maintain observation position, but do not interfere with ground operations. Kestrel's radar detected the approaching aircraft. Two V-22 Ospreys flying at low altitude with transponders indicating special operations configuration. The tiltrotor aircraft carried additional personnel and equipment for whatever Operation Nightfall required, arriving with timing that suggested their launch had been coordinated with Angel 77's emergency landing. The Ospreys settled onto McCord's taxiway with characteristic rotor wash that scattered debris across wide areas. Personnel in protective suits immediately transferred containers from Angel 77 to the waiting aircraft while maintaining containment protocols that prevented any exposure to ambient air. Biological containment, Kestrel whispered to herself, understanding finally dawning. Angel 77 had been recovering biological samples or materials from Alaska, possibly from permafrost regions, where climate change was revealing previously frozen pathogens or research materials. The dual-engine failure had threatened containment protocols that could endanger public health if breached. Darkside, Ghostwriter 21, observing transfer of sealed containers to aircraft. Operation appears focused on maintaining biological containment. Affirmative, Ghostwriter 21. Containment is priority 1. Continue observation until transfer is complete. The pieces fitted together into a coherent picture of classified biological recovery operations that required extraordinary security measures. Climate change in Alaska was exposing materials that demanded immediate containment and analysis. Missions that operated under cover of routine medical evacuation, flights to avoid public attention and potential panic. Kestrel watched the final containers being loaded into the V-22s, while Angel 77's crew underwent decontamination procedures that confirmed her biological containment hypothesis. They'd risked their lives to prevent potential biological hazard from reaching populated areas, heroes whose courage would never receive public recognition. The night's mystery resolved into admiration for professionals who handled extraordinary dangers with ordinary competence. The V-22 Ospreys lifted off into the pre-dawn darkness with their precious and potentially dangerous cargo, rotors transitioning to forward flight mode as they climbed toward whatever secure facility would analyze Angel 77's biological recovery. Kestrel tracked their departure on radar until they vanished beyond her sensor range, carrying secrets that might never be declassified. Darkside, Ghostwriter 21, V-22s airborne and clear of the area. Angel 77 crew completing decontamination procedures. She reported the final phases while watching hazmat teams systematically clean every surface the C-130 had contacted, ensuring no biological contamination remained to threaten base personnel or civilian populations. Copy Ghostwriter 2-1. Mission success confirmed. RTB when ready. Return to base. The simple instruction marked the end of extraordinary operations that had begun with mysterious radar contacts and evolved into biological containment emergency. Kestrel felt the familiar mixture of relief and disappointment that followed classified missions. Relief that dangerous situations had been resolved successfully. Disappointment that the full story would remain forever incomplete in her memory. Razor, Ghostwriter 2-1, mission complete. Form on me for RTB. She called her wingman while beginning the climb back to patrol altitude, leaving McCord's continued ground operations to specialized personnel whose responsibilities extended beyond fighter pilot duties. Copy Wraith, forming up. Captain Chen's F-22 slid into perfect formation position as they departed the scene, two stealth fighters returning to routine patrol duties after witnessing events that would never appear in official reports. The flight back to base provided time for reflection on the night's events. Angel 77's crew had maintained professionalism under extreme circumstances, handling genuine mechanical emergency while protecting classified biological materials that could endanger public health if mishandled. Their medical evacuation cover story had provided necessary operational security while ensuring priority handling for genuine emergencies. Kestrel found herself respecting the entire operations coordination, from Angel 77's crew to the ground personnel who had mobilized instantly to contain potential biological threats. The military's ability to respond rapidly to unexpected developments in classified operations demonstrated why such missions succeeded despite complications that could compromise less prepared organizations. Control, Ghostwriter flight, returning to Patrol Station Alpha. She transmitted while checking her fuel state and weapons status, returning mentally to routine defensive duties after the extraordinary interlude. Copy Ghostwriter flight, resume normal patrol operations. The routine acknowledgement marked complete transition from Special Operations Support back to standard air defense mission. But Kestrel's mind continued processing the night's events, analyzing lessons learned from participating in biological containment operations that most pilots would never encounter during entire careers. Her secure data link provided post-mission briefing materials that filled gaps in her understanding without compromising operational security. Operation Nightfall involved recovery of permafrost samples containing previously unknown biological agents that required immediate laboratory analysis. Climate change in Alaska was exposing materials that had been frozen for millennia, creating potential biological hazards that demanded military intervention to protect public health. The classified briefing concluded with commendations for all personnel involved in successful containment and recovery operations under emergency conditions. Angel 77's crew would receive awards they could never publicly discuss, recognition for courage that civilian populations would never know about. Kestrel felt honored to have participated in operations that protected American citizens from dangers they would never realize existed. Dawn broke across the Pacific Northwest as Ghostwriter flight resumed routine patrol operations, the mystery resolved but the memory permanent. Kestrel watched the sunrise paint the Cascade Mountains in shades of gold and crimson, while her F-22 maintained perfect formation with Razor's aircraft, two Guardians returning to vigilance after extraordinary duty. The secure radio channel carried routine traffic, weather updates, air traffic advisories, mundane communications that marked return to normal operations. But Kestrel's mind remained partially focused on the night's events, processing lessons about biological containment operations that expanded her understanding of military responsibilities beyond conventional air defense missions. Razor, thoughts on tonight's activities? She queried her wingman while they established orbit over their assigned patrol sector, returning to the tedious but necessary work of monitoring American airspace for genuine threats. Professional operation all around, Wraith. Angel 77's crew handled emergency procedures perfectly while maintaining mission security. Ground response was immediate and effective. Makes you appreciate the coordination required for special operations. Captain Chen's assessment matched her own conclusions. The Knight had demonstrated military capabilities that extended far beyond her fighter pilot experience, revealing complex operations that required coordination between multiple agencies and specialties. Biological containment, special operations, intelligence agencies, emergency response, all working together to address threats that conventional military training barely mentioned. Her reflection was interrupted by new taskings from the AWACS controller. Ghost Rider Flight, Control, be advised civilian aircraft requesting emergency assistance, bearing 127 degrees, Angels 15, possible medical emergency aboard. Copy, Control, Ghost Rider Flight responding. Kestrel banked toward the new heading while her mind shifted from biological containment memories to immediate rescue responsibilities. The Knight's extraordinary events hadn't ended her normal duties. They'd simply provided perspective on the full spectrum of missions that required military aviation support. The civilian emergency proved routine: private aircraft with passenger experiencing medical problems, requiring navigation assistance to nearest hospital-equipped airport. No classified materials, no biological hazards, no special operations coordination. Just ordinary people in trouble who needed help that F-22s could provide through communication relay and navigation guidance. But Kestrel found herself appreciating routine emergencies more deeply after witnessing the extraordinary complexities of Operation Nightfall. Simple problems that required straightforward solutions felt almost refreshing compared to biological containment operations that demanded expertise she'd never imagined needing. Control, Ghost Rider 2-1, civilian aircraft vectored successfully to Portland International. Medical assistance will be available upon landing. She reported mission completion, while thinking about the contrast between routine rescue and classified operations that protected entire populations from threats they'd never know existed. The morning shift change brought fresh crews to replace Ghost Rider Flight, pilots who would patrol normal skies without encountering biological containment emergencies or classified material recovery operations. Kestrel felt grateful for the extraordinary experience, while also appreciating that most patrol missions wouldn't require such complex decision-making and multi-agency coordination. Her post-flight debrief would include detailed reports about Angel 77's assistance, but classified portions would remain restricted to personnel with appropriate clearances. The biological containment aspects would never appear in routine squadron records, preserved instead in special operations archives that documented threats to national security. Kestrel realized she'd been privileged to witness military capabilities that most pilots never encountered during entire careers. The landing pattern at Joint Base Lewis McChord stretched before them as Ghost Rider Flight completed their extended patrol mission. Kestrel configured her F-22 for approach, while mentally organizing the complex debrief that would document the night's extraordinary events. Standard procedures required separate reports for routine patrol activities and classified operations, ensuring appropriate information security while maintaining accurate operational records. Tower, Ghost Rider Flight, requesting priority landing for special operations debrief. She transmitted while watching the base's familiar runway environment appear through the morning haze. normal operations resuming after the biological containment emergency that had transformed routine patrol into classified mission support. Ghost Rider Flight Tower, cleared for priority approach runway 01. Special Operations Debrief Team standing by in Building 2156. The response confirmed that intelligence personnel were prepared for immediate post-mission interviews, standard procedure for pilots who'd observed classified activities requiring operational security protection. Kestrel's reports would contribute to after-action analysis that might influence future biological containment protocols and interagency coordination procedures. Her F-22 touched down with characteristic precision, thrust reversers engaging automatically while she maintained directional control down the center line. The familiar sensation of wheels on concrete marked transition from extraordinary night operations back to routine post-flight procedures, but her mind remained focused on the classified debrief that would document Angel 77's biological containment mission. Ghost Rider 2-1, contact ground control 121.9, taxi to Special Operations Ramp. The tower controller's instruction directed her towards secure areas where classified debriefs occurred away from normal flight line activities that might compromise operational security. Captain Chen's aircraft followed her through the taxi pattern toward Building 2156, both pilots understanding that their observations of Operation Nightfall would require detailed documentation and analysis by intelligence specialists. The biological containment aspects alone justified extensive post-mission interviews that might continue for several hours. The Special Operations Ramp was isolated from main base activities by security barriers and armed guards who verified credentials before allowing access to classified briefing facilities. Kestrel had participated in similar debriefs after combat missions, but biological containment operations represented new territory that required different expertise and analysis procedures. Major Vance, Captain Chen, welcome to Special Operations Debrief Facility. The intelligence officer who met them wore civilian clothes but carried military identification that indicated Defense Intelligence Agency affiliation. I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez, Biological Threat Assessment Specialist. We need to document everything you observed during Angel 77's recovery operation. Dr. Martinez led them through security checkpoints into briefing rooms equipped with classified computer systems and recording equipment that would capture every detail of their observations. The biological containment aspects required immediate analysis to ensure no environmental threats had been overlooked during emergency procedures. Before we begin, I need to explain that your observations tonight involved Operation Nightfall, a classified biological recovery mission that addresses potential threats from climate change effects in Alaska permafrost regions. Your reports will help us assess whether containment procedures remained effective during emergency conditions. The explanation provided context that made Angel 77's mission clear. They'd been recovering biological materials from Alaska permafrost that climate change was exposing for the first time in millennia. The samples could contain unknown pathogens or biological agents that required immediate laboratory analysis to assess potential threats to public health. Dr. Martinez, we observed systematic containment procedures throughout the ground operation. Personnel wore level of protective equipment and maintained sealed container protocols during transfer to aircraft. Kestrel began her report while the intelligence officer recorded details that would contribute to operational security assessments. Excellent. Did you observe any breaches of containment during Angel 77's emergency landing or ground operations? Any exposure of biological materials to ambient air or base personnel? The question emphasized the critical importance of maintaining biological containment, even during emergency situations that could compromise normal protocols. Public health considerations required absolute certainty that dangerous materials hadn't been accidentally released during mechanical emergency procedures. Kestrel reviewed her thermal imaging observations carefully before responding. Negative containment breaches observed. All biological materials remained in sealed containers throughout emergency landing and transfer operations. Decontamination procedures appeared comprehensive and systematic. Her detailed account would help intelligence analysts assess whether Operation Nightfall had succeeded in preventing biological hazard exposure despite mechanical problems that threatened mission security. Dr. Martinez's debrief continued for 3 hours, documenting every aspect of the biological containment operation with precision that reflected the potential consequences of containment failure. Kestrel's observations provided crucial external verification that all safety protocols had been maintained despite emergency conditions that could have compromised less professional operations. Your reports confirm successful biological containment under adverse conditions, Dr. Martinez concluded, while organizing classified documentation that would become part of Operation Nightfall's permanent record. Angel 77's crew and ground personnel maintained perfect protocols despite mechanical emergency that threatened mission security. The assessment provided professional satisfaction that their escort mission had supported successful biological threat containment. Climate change was creating new challenges that required military intervention to protect civilian populations from dangers they'd never realize existed. Missions that operated in secrecy to prevent public panic while ensuring national security. Major Vance, your observations tonight demonstrate the expanded responsibilities that modern military aviation must address. Biological threats, environmental hazards, climate change effects, all require military response capabilities that extend beyond conventional defense missions. Dr. Martinez's observation highlighted evolving military roles that reflected changing global threats. Traditional enemy aircraft and missiles remained important, but biological hazards from environmental changes created new responsibilities that required different training and coordination procedures. Kestrel left the debrief facility with deeper appreciation for military complexity that extended far beyond her fighter pilot experience. Operation Nightfall represented just one example of classified missions that protected American citizens from threats they'd never know about. Operations that required courage and professionalism from personnel who'd never receive public recognition. The morning sun was fully risen as she walked toward the squadron building. Normal base operations resuming around her while classified materials from Alaska traveled toward laboratories that would determine whether climate change had exposed biological dangers requiring further military intervention. Her extraordinary night had ended, but the memory would influence her understanding of military service for the remainder of her career. Some missions protected American airspace from foreign threats. Others protected American citizens from environmental hazards that demanded equal courage and professionalism. Both responsibilities deserved her complete dedication and skill. Whether routine patrol or classified biological containment operations that pushed military aviation into territories that previous generations of pilots never imagined encountering. Squadron operations had returned to normal routine by the time Kestrel entered the building where her fellow pilots were beginning standard morning briefings. The contrast between classified biological containment operations and routine flight scheduling felt almost surreal after the night's extraordinary events, but military service required seamless transitions between mundane duties and exceptional missions. Wraith, how was the midnight patrol? Lieutenant Colonel James Viper Harrison, the squadron commander, asked while reviewing the daily flight schedule that would return operations to predictable patterns after the biological containment emergency. Interesting night, sir. Full debrief is classified, but we provided escort assistance for emergency aircraft conducting priority medical mission. Kestrel's response followed security protocols that protected operational details while acknowledging significant events that might affect squadron readiness or personnel assignments. Understood. Get some rest. You're scheduled for afternoon training flight with the new pilots who need formation experience. The commander's casual assignment demonstrated how quickly military operations return to routine training after completing classified missions that civilian populations would never learn about. But Kestrel found concentration difficult during the routine squadron briefing that covered weather conditions, airspace restrictions, and training objectives. Her mind kept returning to Angel 77's crew and their professional handling of genuine emergency conditions, while protecting biological materials that could endanger public health if mishandled. The biological containment mission represented military service at its most essential, protecting American citizens from dangers they'd never realize existed, missions that required extraordinary skill and courage from personnel who'd never receive public recognition. Such operations justified the extensive training and resources devoted to military aviation capabilities that seemed excessive during peacetime. Major Vance, you seem distracted this morning. Captain Lisa Phoenix Rodriguez, one of the squadron's newer pilots, observed during the post-briefing discussion. Anything from last night's patrol that might affect our training missions. Just thinking about the complexity of modern military aviation, Phoenix. Our responsibilities extend beyond air-to-air combat into areas that require different skills and coordination procedures. Kestrel's response avoided classified details while acknowledging that her perspective on military service had been expanded by the night's events. Her squadron mates would never learn about Operation Nightfall or biological containment missions that protected civilians from climate change effects in Alaska. But they deserved understanding that their training prepared them for responsibilities that extended far beyond conventional fighter pilot duties, missions that might require coordinating with intelligence agencies and special operations personnel. The world's changing, Wraith. Climate effects, biological threats, environmental hazards, all creating new military missions that our training needs to address. Captain Chen's observation demonstrated his own reflection on the night's extraordinary events and their implications for future military aviation requirements. The discussion continued during lunch, pilots analyzing how evolving global threats required expanded military capabilities that traditional air defense training hadn't addressed. Biological containment, environmental monitoring, climate change effects, all demanded coordination skills and knowledge that extended beyond conventional fighter pilot education. Kestrel realized that Angel 77's mission represented the future of military aviation. Complex operations that required coordination between multiple agencies and specialties. Missions that protected civilian populations from threats that previous generations of military personnel never encountered. Her afternoon training flight with new pilots provided opportunity to share lessons learned without compromising classified information. Modern military aviation required understanding of interagency coordination, emergency response procedures, and operational security protocols that extended beyond traditional air combat training. Phoenix, modern fighter pilots need to understand that our missions might involve supporting operations that require biological containment protocols or special security measures. She explained while demonstrating formation procedures that would apply whether escorting routine transport aircraft or classified missions requiring extraordinary protection. The training flight proceeded normally, but Kestrel emphasized coordination procedures and communication disciplines that would serve her students well if they encountered missions requiring interagency support or classified material protection. Such preparation might prove crucial during careers that could include biological containment operations or other extraordinary duties. Her night patrol had evolved from routine air defense into classified biological containment support, demonstrating how quickly military missions could transition from ordinary to extraordinary circumstances, requiring immediate adaptation and professional excellence under unprecedented conditions. The afternoon training mission concluded successfully, with new pilots demonstrating formation skills and communication procedures that would serve them throughout careers that might include missions far beyond conventional air combat. Kestrel felt satisfaction in passing along lessons that could help future military aviators handle extraordinary circumstances with the professionalism that military service demanded. Evening approached as she completed post-flight paperwork documenting routine training activities that contrasted sharply with the classified reports still being analyzed by intelligence specialists. Military service required managing both mundane training duties and extraordinary operational responsibilities with equal professional dedication. Her extraordinary night had ended, but its influence would continue throughout her remaining military career. Some missions would be routine patrols that encountered nothing more exciting than weather deviations and civilian aircraft requesting navigation assistance. Others might involve biological containment operations or classified activities that protected American citizens from threats they'd never know existed. Both types of missions deserved complete professional competence and dedication, whether routine training flights or classified operations that pushed military aviation into unprecedented territories requiring courage and skill that went far beyond traditional fighter pilot duties. Kestrel realized that Angel 77's crew had demonstrated the highest levels of military professionalism by maintaining mission security while handling genuine mechanical emergencies that threatened both their lives and the biological containment protocols that protected civilian populations from potential environmental hazards. Such dedication deserved recognition that classification restrictions would never allow, but the memory would influence her own commitment to military excellence, regardless of whether future missions involved routine air defense or extraordinary biological containment operations that demanded equal courage and professional skill. The sun set over Joint Base Lewis McChord as another day of military operations concluded, but the memory of Angel 77's biological containment mission would remain permanent reminder that military service protected American citizens through missions that required extraordinary courage and professionalism from personnel who might never receive the recognition their service deserved. 3 weeks passed before Kestrel learned the final outcome of Operation Nightfall's biological recovery mission. The classified briefing arrived through secure channels that required special clearance verification, but Dr. Martinez had authorized follow-up information for pilots who'd provided crucial mission support during emergency conditions. Major Vance, the biological materials recovered by Angel 77 have been analyzed at CDC laboratories under maximum containment protocols. Dr. Martinez explained during the secure video conference that connected McChord with classified facilities in Atlanta. Your observations helped confirm that no containment breaches occurred during emergency procedures. The assessment provided professional satisfaction that their escort mission had contributed to successful biological threat analysis. The materials from Alaska permafrost had indeed contained previously unknown pathogens that required immediate laboratory study to assess potential dangers to public health and environmental security. Dr. Martinez, what did the analysis reveal about the biological materials? Are there ongoing threats that require continued military intervention? Kestrel asked, while understanding that classification restrictions might limit the information available to tactical personnel who'd supported strategic operations. The samples contained several previously unknown bacterial strains and viral fragments that had been preserved in permafrost for approximately 15,000 years. Climate change is exposing these materials at accelerating rates throughout Alaska and northern Canada, creating potential biological hazards that require ongoing military monitoring and recovery operations. The explanation revealed that Angel 77's mission represented ongoing responsibilities rather than isolated incident. Climate change was creating new categories of national security threats that required expanded military capabilities for biological containment and environmental monitoring throughout Arctic regions. Additional Operation Nightfall missions are planned for the coming months, focusing on permafrost regions where climate change is exposing biological materials that require immediate recovery and analysis. Your squadron may be tasked with providing escort support for future biological containment operations. The possibility of additional classified missions provided purpose that extended beyond routine air defense patrols. Protecting American citizens from biological threats created by climate change represented military service at its most essential, preventing dangers that civilian populations would never realize existed without military intervention. We'll be prepared to support future biological containment operations. Dr. Martinez. Last month's mission demonstrated the coordination required between tactical aviation and specialized recovery teams. Kestrel's response acknowledged both the complexity of such operations and her squadron's readiness to provide necessary support. The briefing concluded with commendations for all personnel involved in successful biological containment under emergency conditions. Angel 77's crew had received classified awards for maintaining mission security while handling mechanical problems that could have compromised public health safety, recognition they could never discuss publicly. Kestrel felt honored to have participated in operations that protected American citizens from environmental threats that previous generations of military personnel never encountered. Climate change was creating new categories of national security challenges that required military aviation capabilities far beyond traditional air combat missions. Her squadron's training schedule now included coordination procedures for biological containment operations, preparing pilots for missions that might require interagency cooperation and classified material protection under emergency conditions. Such preparation reflected evolving military responsibilities that addressed changing global threats. The memory of Angel 77's crew, maintaining perfect professionalism under extraordinary circumstances, continued influencing her approach to military service. Whether routine patrols or classified biological containment missions, all operations deserved complete professional dedication and skill that honored the trust American citizens placed in military personnel. Future missions might involve escorting additional biological recovery operations or other classified activities that protected civilian populations from environmental hazards created by climate change. All would require the same courage and professionalism that Angel 77's crew had demonstrated during mechanical emergencies that threatened both their lives and public health security. Kestrel understood that her extraordinary night patrol had provided perspective on military service that would influence her remaining career. Some missions protected American airspace from foreign threats. Others protected American citizens from environmental dangers that demanded equal professional excellence and personal courage from personnel who might never receive public recognition for their service. Both responsibilities deserved her complete commitment to military excellence, whether conducting routine training flights or supporting classified operations that address threats beyond conventional military experience. Angel 77's mission had demonstrated that modern military aviation required readiness for responsibilities that previous generations of pilots never imagined encountering during their service careers. The classified nature of biological containment operations meant that public recognition would never acknowledge the courage and professionalism required for such missions, but the memory would permanent reminder of military service at its most essential and honorable level. 6 months later, Kestrel found herself leading a four-ship formation of F-22s, providing escort for another Angel flight conducting biological recovery operations in Alaska. Operation Nightfall had expanded into systematic monitoring of permafrost regions, where climate change continued exposing materials that required military intervention to protect public health. Angel Flight 23, Ghost Rider Flight, good morning. We have visual contact and are prepared to provide escort to Recovery Area Designate Alpha 7. She transmitted, while her formation maintained tactical spacing around the C-130 that carried specialized recovery teams and containment equipment toward remote Alaska locations. Ghost Rider Flight, Angel 23, good morning and thank you for the escort. Weather conditions are marginal at the recovery site, but we're prepared for extended operations. The response came from experienced crew who'd participated in multiple biological containment missions, since Angel 77's emergency had demonstrated the importance of such operations. The flight north took 3 hours through increasingly challenging weather that tested both formation flying skills and electronic coordination between fighter escorts and transport aircraft. Alaska's remote regions provided perfect concealment for classified operations that civilian populations would never learn about, missions that protected environmental security through military intervention. Her tactical display showed the recovery area approaching, coordinates in northern Alaska, where permafrost thaw had exposed biological materials requiring immediate containment and analysis. Satellite imagery revealed dozens of similar sites throughout the Arctic region, each representing potential biological hazards that demanded ongoing military attention. Angel 23, Recovery Area in Sight, recommends standard orbit pattern while your teams conduct ground operations. Kestrel established the protective formation that would provide security and communication relay during biological recovery procedures that might continue for several hours. The ground operation proceeded with systematic precision that reflected months of experience gained through Operation Nightfall missions. Specialized teams in protective equipment conducted careful excavation and containment of materials that had been frozen for millennia, working under military protection that ensured operational security. Her formation maintained vigilant observation throughout the recovery operation, but Kestrel's mind reflected on how routine the extraordinary had become. Biological containment missions now represented normal duty assignments that required coordination skills and security awareness, extending far beyond traditional fighter pilot training. Ghost Rider Lead, recovery teams report successful containment of biological samples. Angel 23 is preparing for departure. The mission update marked another successful biological recovery operation that would contribute to ongoing analysis of climate change, effects on environmental security. The flight back to base provided time for reflection on how Angel 77's emergency mission had evolved into systematic biological containment operations that addressed new categories of national security threats. Military aviation had adapted to environmental challenges that required capabilities far beyond conventional air combat missions. Her squadron now conducted biological containment escort missions monthly, protecting recovery operations throughout Alaska and northern Canada, where climate change continued exposing materials that demanded immediate military intervention. Such missions had become routine duties that required extraordinary professional competence. The memory of that first encounter with Angel 77 remained significant because it had introduced her to military responsibilities that extended beyond traditional defensive missions. Protecting American citizens from environmental threats created by climate change represented service at its most essential level, regardless of whether such missions ever received public recognition. Future operations would continue addressing biological threats discovered throughout Arctic regions, missions that required coordination between tactical aviation, special operations teams, intelligence agencies, and scientific personnel. All would demand the professional excellence that military service required regardless of mission complexity or classification restrictions. Kestrel understood that Angel 77's crew had demonstrated standards of military professionalism that influenced her approach to all subsequent missions, whether routine training flights or classified operations that protected civilian populations from dangers they'd never realize existed. Such dedication honored the trust American citizens placed in military personnel, who accepted responsibilities extending far beyond conventional understanding of military service, missions that might never receive recognition, but deserved complete professional commitment and personal courage from those privileged to participate in protecting national security through extraordinary means. 2 years after her first encounter with Angel 77, Major Kestrel Wraith, Vance received orders transferring her to the Pentagon's newly established Climate Security Operations Center, where her experience with biological containment missions qualified her for strategic planning responsibilities that addressed expanding environmental threats to national security. The assignment represented career advancement that recognized her expertise in coordinating military aviation with specialized operations addressing unconventional threats. Her experiences escorting Angel flights had provided unique qualifications for positions requiring understanding of both tactical aviation and strategic environmental security challenges. Major Vance, your operational experience with biological containment missions makes you ideal for coordinating expanded climate security operations throughout Arctic regions. Colonel Patricia Falcon Thompson explained during the assignment briefing that outlined responsibilities extending far beyond individual fighter pilot duties. The Pentagon assignment would involve planning and coordinating military responses to environmental threats created by climate change, missions that required tactical aviation support for scientific and intelligence operations, protecting civilian populations from biological hazards and other environmental dangers. Her new office overlooked the Potomac River, but Kestrel's mind remained focused on Alaska's remote regions, where military personnel continued conducting biological containment operations under conditions that demanded extraordinary professional competence and personal courage from participants who might never receive public recognition. The Climate Security Operations Center coordinates with 15 different agencies addressing environmental threats to national security. Colonel Thompson continued while explaining the complexity of modern military responsibilities that extended far beyond conventional defense missions. Your tactical experience provides crucial perspective for strategic planning. The briefing revealed that Operation Nightfall had expanded into comprehensive environmental monitoring throughout Arctic regions, where climate change was exposing threats that required ongoing military intervention. Biological containment represented just one category of environmental hazards that demanded expanded military capabilities. Her first strategic planning meeting included representatives from the Centers for Disease Control, Environmental Protection Agency, National Science Foundation, Defense Intelligence Agency, and Special Operations Command. Interagency coordination that reflected the complexity of addressing environmental threats to national security. Major Vance's operational reports have provided crucial insight into tactical requirements for biological containment missions. Dr. Martinez explained, while presenting analysis based on 2 years of Angel flight operations. Her recommendations have influenced equipment specifications and training procedures throughout climate security operations. The recognition provided professional satisfaction that her tactical experience had contributed to strategic improvements in environmental security operations. Individual missions like Angel 77's emergency had evolved into systematic military capabilities that addressed expanding threats created by climate change effects. Her new responsibilities included reviewing after-action reports from biological containment missions throughout Arctic regions, analyzing tactical lessons learned, and developing improved procedures for coordinating military aviation with specialized recovery operations under challenging environmental conditions. The work provided broader perspective on military service that extended far beyond individual combat missions. Environmental security required long-term strategic planning and interagency coordination that addressed threats to entire civilian populations, responsibilities that demanded different skills than tactical aviation, but required equal professional dedication. Evening brought time for reflection on how Angel 77's emergency mission had influenced her entire military career. That extraordinary night had introduced her to military responsibilities that extended beyond conventional air combat into environmental protection missions that required coordinating multiple agencies and specialties. Her Pentagon assignment represented the culmination of experience gained through dozens of biological containment escort missions, tactical knowledge that now contributed to strategic planning for environmental security operations, protecting American citizens from threats they'd never know existed. The memory of Angel 77's crew, maintaining perfect professionalism under emergency conditions, continued influencing her approach to all military responsibilities, whether tactical missions or strategic planning that address threats extending far beyond traditional military experience. Future assignments might return her to tactical aviation or continue strategic planning for environmental security operations, but all would require the professional excellence that military service demanded regardless of mission complexity or public recognition. Kestrel understood that her extraordinary encounter with biological containment operations had provided perspective on military service that honored the trust American citizens placed in personnel who accepted responsibilities extending far beyond conventional understanding of national defense. Such dedication deserved her complete professional commitment, whether conducting tactical missions or strategic planning that protected civilian populations from environmental threats that might never receive public attention, but required extraordinary courage and skill from military personnel privileged to serve in protecting national security. The Climate Security Operations Center had been established to address expanding environmental threats that traditional military organization hadn't anticipated. Missions that required coordination between tactical aviation, scientific research, intelligence analysis, and special operations capabilities addressing unconventional challenges to national security. Colonel Thompson's strategic briefings revealed the scope of environmental threats that demanded military intervention throughout Arctic regions, where climate change was accelerating exposure of materials that had been safely frozen for millennia. Biological containment represented just one category of hazards requiring ongoing military attention and resources. Major Vance, your next assignment involves developing tactical procedures for chemical containment operations, addressing industrial pollutants being exposed by permafrost thaw throughout Alaska and northern Canada. Colonel Thompson explained, while presenting satellite imagery that showed dozens of contaminated sites requiring military intervention. Chemical containment operations represented expanded responsibilities that built upon biological containment experience, but required different equipment specifications and coordination procedures. Industrial activities from previous decades had left chemical deposits that climate change was now exposing, creating environmental hazards that demanded immediate military response. Her tactical planning responsibilities included analyzing escort requirements for chemical recovery missions, developing communication procedures for coordinating with Environmental Protection Agency specialists, and establishing training standards for pilots who might support such operations under challenging conditions. The work provided deeper understanding of how climate change was creating multiple categories of environmental threats that required expanded military capabilities, addressing dangers that previous generations of military personnel never encountered during their service careers. Her office walls displayed tactical charts showing chemical contamination sites throughout Arctic regions, each location representing potential environmental hazards that required military intervention to prevent civilian population exposure. The scope of environmental security responsibilities extended far beyond individual mission requirements. Strategic planning meetings included coordination with Canadian military forces, addressing similar environmental threats throughout their Arctic territories. International cooperation that reflected the global scope of climate change effects requiring military intervention for environmental security. The United States and Canadian governments are establishing joint environmental security operations, addressing contamination sites that cross international boundaries. Colonel Thompson explained during briefings that revealed the expanding scope of military responsibilities addressing environmental threats created by climate change. Joint operations required coordination procedures that extended beyond individual nation capabilities. Missions that demanded interagency and international cooperation for addressing environmental hazards that could affect civilian populations throughout North America without regard for political boundaries. Her tactical experience with biological containment missions provided crucial background for developing procedures that would address chemical contamination with similar professional competence and operational security requirements. Environmental threats demanded military responses that protected civilian populations from dangers they'd never realize existed. The memory of Angel 77's emergency mission continued influencing her approach to strategic planning that addressed environmental security. Professional excellence under extraordinary circumstances represented standards that applied whether conducting individual tactical missions or developing strategic capabilities addressing environmental threats throughout entire regions. Future chemical containment operations would require coordination between tactical aviation and specialized recovery teams similar to biological containment missions, but addressing different categories of environmental hazards that demanded expanded military expertise and capabilities. Her strategic planning responsibilities extended beyond individual mission requirements to comprehensive environmental security operations that protected American and Canadian civilian populations from chemical contamination, effects created by climate change throughout Arctic regions. The work honored the trust that civilian populations placed in military personnel, who accepted responsibilities for protecting environmental security through missions that might never receive public recognition, but required extraordinary professional dedication and personal courage from participants. Environmental security represented military service at its most essential level, protecting civilian populations from threats created by climate change, effects that previous generations never encountered. Missions that demanded expanded military capabilities addressing unconventional challenges to national security. Kestrel understood that her progression from tactical fighter pilot to strategic environmental security planning represented military career development that honored the professional standards demonstrated by Angel 77's crew during their extraordinary emergency mission that had introduced her to military responsibilities extending far beyond conventional air combat duties. 5 years after Angel 77's emergency landing, Kestrel received promotion to lieutenant colonel and assignment as deputy commander of the newly established Environmental Security Wing, a specialized military organization dedicated to addressing climate change effects that threaten national security through biological, chemical, and radiological hazards requiring ongoing military intervention. The promotion ceremony took place at the Pentagon with Colonel Thompson presenting the Silver Oak Leaves that recognized career progression from tactical fighter pilot to strategic environmental security leadership. Her experiences with biological containment missions had qualified her for responsibilities that few military officers possess the background to understand or execute effectively. Lieutenant Colonel Vance's tactical experience and strategic planning expertise make her uniquely qualified to command environmental security operations that protect American citizens from threats created by climate change throughout Arctic regions. Colonel Thompson stated, while explaining the expanding scope of military responsibilities that addressed environmental hazards requiring extraordinary professional competence. The Environmental Security Wing commanded specialized aircraft, personnel, and equipment dedicated to environmental threat response throughout North America and Arctic regions, where climate change continued exposing materials that demanded immediate military intervention for civilian population protection. Her new responsibilities included coordinating with scientific institutions throughout the United States and Canada, intelligence agencies monitoring environmental threats, special operations units conducting recovery missions, and tactical aviation providing escort and communication support for classified operations addressing environmental security. The command briefing revealed that environmental security operations had expanded to include radiological containment, addressing nuclear materials from Cold War-era military installations being exposed by permafrost thaw, creating additional categories of environmental threats requiring specialized military capabilities and interagency coordination. Operation Nightfall has evolved into comprehensive environmental security operations addressing biological, chemical, and radiological threats throughout regions affected by climate change. Colonel Thompson explained, while presenting strategic assessments that revealed the expanding scope of military responsibilities addressing environmental hazards. Lieutenant Colonel Vance's first command decision involved establishing training standards for pilots supporting environmental security missions, requirements that built upon her tactical experience while addressing expanded responsibilities that included multiple categories of environmental threats requiring different equipment specifications and coordination procedures. Her command staff included officers with backgrounds in biological sciences, chemical engineering, nuclear physics, and environmental law, expertise that reflected the interdisciplinary nature of environmental security operations, requiring coordination between military capabilities and civilian scientific institutions, addressing climate change effects. The Environmental Security Wing's aircraft included specially modified C-130s for environmental recovery missions, F-22s providing escort and communication support, specialized helicopters equipped for environmental monitoring, and transport aircraft capable of carrying scientific equipment and personnel to remote Arctic locations, requiring environmental security intervention. Her office commanded view of the Potomac River, but Lieutenant Colonel Vance's attention remained focused on Arctic regions, where her personnel conducted environmental security missions, protecting civilian populations from threats they'd never know existed, operations that required extraordinary courage and professional competence from participants. The memory of Angel 77's crew maintaining perfect professionalism during their extraordinary emergency mission continued influencing her command philosophy that emphasized professional excellence regardless of mission complexity or public recognition. Environmental security operations deserve the same dedication as conventional military missions. Strategic planning responsibilities included coordinating environmental security operations with similar organizations throughout allied nations, addressing climate change, effects requiring international cooperation for protecting civilian populations from environmental hazards that crossed political boundaries without regard for national sovereignty. Her command represented the culmination of military career development that began with tactical fighter pilot duties and evolved through environmental security experience into strategic leadership responsibilities, addressing threats that previous generations of military personnel never encountered during their service careers. Future operations would continue addressing expanding environmental threats throughout Arctic regions, where climate change was accelerating exposure of materials requiring ongoing military intervention. Missions that demanded professional excellence from personnel who might never receive public recognition for protecting civilian populations. The Environmental Security Wing honored military service traditions while addressing unprecedented challenges that required expanded capabilities and interagency coordination, extending far beyond conventional military experience. Responsibilities that demanded extraordinary dedication from personnel privileged to protect national security through environmental protection missions. Lieutenant Colonel Vance understood that her command represented military service at its most essential level, protecting American citizens through operations that addressed environmental threats created by climate change. Missions that required courage and professional competence equal to any combat operations, while serving civilian populations who might never realize the dangers that military intervention prevented. The Environmental Security Wing's first major operation under Lieutenant Colonel Vance's command involved coordinating international environmental security efforts addressing radiological contamination, discovered throughout Arctic regions, where Cold War-era military installations were being exposed by accelerating permafrost thaw, creating unprecedented challenges that demanded expanded military capabilities. Operation Arctic Shield will involve coordination with Canadian, Norwegian, and Danish military forces, addressing radiological threats throughout Arctic regions that require immediate containment to prevent environmental catastrophe. Colonel Thompson explained during the strategic briefing that outlined the most complex environmental security mission ever attempted by Allied military organizations. The operation would require deploying Environmental Security Wing aircraft and personnel throughout Arctic regions for extended periods, conducting systematic recovery of radiological materials while maintaining containment protocols that prevented environmental contamination, affecting civilian populations throughout North America and European Arctic territories. Lieutenant Colonel Vance's tactical experience with biological and chemical containment operations provided crucial background for addressing radiological threats that demanded similar coordination procedures, but required different equipment specifications and safety protocols addressing nuclear materials that had been frozen for decades. Her command staff developed operational plans that included specialized aircraft modifications for radiological detection, personnel training for nuclear material handling, coordination procedures with international military and civilian agencies, and communication protocols that maintained operational security while ensuring safety of all participants. The radiological materials being exposed by climate change include nuclear reactor components, weapons-grade materials, and radioactive waste from military installations that were established during Cold War operations throughout Arctic regions. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the wing's nuclear physicist, explained during technical briefings that revealed the scope of environmental threats. The strategic assessment indicated that Arctic regions contained dozens of sites where military installations had been abandoned during Cold War conclusion, leaving nuclear materials that were safely contained by permafrost, until climate change began exposing them to environmental conditions that could create widespread radiological contamination. Operation Arctic Shield represented military environmental security operations at their most complex and dangerous, requiring coordination between tactical aviation, specialized recovery teams, nuclear safety experts, international military organizations, and civilian agencies throughout multiple nations addressing shared environmental threats. Her first operational deployment took the Environmental Security Wing to northern Alaska, where satellite surveillance had detected radiological signatures indicating nuclear materials exposure at abandoned Cold War installations. The mission would test every aspect of environmental security capabilities under conditions that demanded extraordinary professional competence. Lieutenant Colonel Vance, this deployment will establish procedures and standards for international environmental security operations that may continue for decades as climate change exposes additional nuclear materials throughout Arctic regions. Colonel Thompson stated during pre-deployment briefings that emphasized the strategic importance of successful mission completion. The deployment represented transition from individual environmental security missions to comprehensive operations addressing regional environmental threats that required sustained military intervention for protecting civilian populations throughout North America from radiological contamination that could affect entire ecosystems. Her aircraft departed Joint Base Lewis McChord in formation with Canadian military environmental security units, the first international environmental security operation conducted under unified command, addressing climate change effects that threatened civilian populations without regard for political boundaries. The flight north took the combined formation over increasingly remote Arctic terrain where climate change effects were most visible. Exposed tundra, thawing permafrost, and altered landscapes that revealed the scope of environmental changes, creating new categories of national security threats requiring military intervention. Lieutenant Colonel Vance reflected on the progression from Angel 77's emergency mission to commanding international environmental security operations, addressing nuclear threats throughout Arctic regions. Her tactical experience had evolved into strategic responsibilities that protected civilian populations from dangers that previous generations of military personnel never encountered. The memory of that first biological containment mission continued influencing her command approach that emphasized professional excellence and interagency coordination, regardless of mission complexity. Environmental security operations demanded the same courage and dedication as conventional military missions, while addressing threats that extended far beyond traditional military experience. Operation Arctic Shield would establish standards for environmental security operations that might continue throughout her remaining military career. Missions that honored the trust civilian populations placed in military personnel, who accepted extraordinary responsibilities for protecting national security through environmental protection. The international formation continued north toward Arctic regions, where nuclear materials waited in frozen ground that climate change was rapidly exposing, creating environmental security challenges that demanded the best professional capabilities that allied military organizations could provide for protecting civilian populations from threats they'd never realize existed. Operation Arctic Shield's first phase involved establishing forward operating bases in northern Alaska and Canadian Arctic territories, remote locations that required airlift capabilities and logistical coordination, extending far beyond conventional military deployment experiences. The Environmental Security Wing's specialized aircraft proved essential for transporting nuclear safety equipment and personnel to sites accessible only by air. Base Camp Alpha, established at coordinates 71, 3 degrees N 156, 8 degrees W, all environmental security equipment operational and ready for radiological recovery operations. Lieutenant Colonel Vance reported to Joint Task Force Headquarters, while her personnel completed deployment procedures under Arctic conditions that tested equipment specifications and personnel training. The base camp represented international cooperation between American and Canadian environmental security forces, shared facilities that demonstrated Allied commitment to addressing environmental threats that affected both nations equally. Nuclear materials exposed by climate change created dangers that required cooperative military intervention regardless of political boundaries. Her first radiological recovery mission involved investigating abandoned radar installations where satellite surveillance had detected nuclear power source exposure. Missions that required coordination between her tactical aviation assets and specialized nuclear recovery teams equipped with containment systems designed specifically for Arctic operations. Ghost Rider Flight, this is Environmental Security Base. You are cleared for reconnaissance mission to investigate radiological signatures at coordinates 72, 1 degrees N 158, 3 degrees W. Report all findings immediately for safety assessment. She transmitted while her F-22s departed base camp toward the suspected nuclear exposure site. The reconnaissance flight revealed extensive permafrost thaw around abandoned military installations, exposing nuclear power sources that had been safely contained by frozen ground for 40 years. Climate change had created environmental conditions that threatened to spread radiological contamination throughout Arctic ecosystems if immediate military intervention didn't prevent environmental catastrophe. Base, Ghost Rider lead, confirming extensive radiological exposure at target coordinates. Nuclear power sources visible on surface, requiring immediate containment operations. The pilot's report confirmed satellite surveillance assessments and justified immediate deployment of specialized nuclear recovery teams. Nuclear containment operations proceeded with systematic precision that reflected months of preparation and training. But Arctic conditions created challenges that tested equipment capabilities and personnel endurance under extreme environmental conditions that conventional military training hadn't addressed.